So we've moved a few miles, still on the Sisters Ranger District of the Deschutes National Forest. And here we're looking at an Abies. This looks pretty concolor. Looks like a more white fur than grand fur. So I'm going to call it a white fur. So we're looking at a white fur here, and it seems reasonably healthy. But if we look inside here, we can see that there's some different colored stuff. And we've got a lot of it up in here. And it's appearing as yellowish shoots that are coming out of the main stem. Break a little off here. So you should have already immediately concluded from our lecture that this is some form of mistletoe. And it is indeed a mistletoe, which is a parasitic plant. And in lecture, we divided those mistletoes into two groups: the true mistletoes, genus Phoradendron, and the dwarf mistletoes, genus Archeuthobium. And we said that there are a few dwarf mistletoes here in Central Oregon that are problematic. However, the Phoradendron true mistletoes typically don't cause too much problem. So again, using your powers of deduction, you should arrive at, hey, this is probably some form of Archeuthobium, and you'd be correct, okay? Now, the beauty of Archeuthobium is in Central Oregon, each Archeuthobium species is host specific. So because we have it hosting in Abies concolor, this would be Archeuthobium abiatinum. And abiatinum hosts in a number of different Abies, not just white fur, but it is exclusive to the genus Abies. So then we look over here and we see that, wow, not only does this tree have some pretty good mistletoe in it, but look at this dead limb here. And this is a classic example of what we call branch flagging. These limbs here, vibrant, green, don't appear to be anything wrong with them. This limb here, clearly not going to come back, okay? So what's causing the branch flagging? Or is it the mistletoe that's causing the branch flagging? And the answer is kind of. It's actually another pathogen. And remember in our discussion about tree diseases, we said tree diseases need entry courts. They need some way to get into a tree. So if we look at this branch, we are most assuredly going to find that it has mistletoe somewhere on this limb. And it may be a little challenging to see here, but if we look up deep up inside here, we see that there is in fact a mistletoe infection on this limb. Well, we have other limbs that are infected and aren't dead, so why is this one dead? It turns out there is a fungal disease called Cytospora canker. And Cytospora canker is a fungal pathogen that digests away cambium, and it gets onto limbs through small wounds. And the wound that we have on this tree that has allowed that to penetrate is the dwarf mistletoe. So they call that the dwarf mistletoe Cytospora complex, meaning it's two pathogens serving to cause pathology to the host tree. Now you couldn't remember from our discussion of mistletoes what's the chief effect on the tree? Loss of growth. But in this case, not only do we have loss of growth due to the mistletoe, but we have potential loss of limbs due to the Cytospora canker entering. And we'll look at some trees here where you can see that long-term infection by the Cytospora canker in the mistletoe entry courts leads to a really declining, not healthy tree that's ripe for bark beetles, most notably Scolitis ventralis. So when you look at these trees that have, a number of green limbs interspersed with the flagged red limbs, each one of those red limbs is the result of entry of the Cytospora fungus, girdles the limb, kills the limb. And so you can see that crown is, not what we would call healthy or vigorous. And at some point, Scolitis ventralis will find that tree appealing, and that tree will meet its end due to a combination of, you know, the three factors: the mistletoe, the cytospora, and then ultimately the finally the bark beetles.